So I'm Dr Ros Taylor and I am delighted to welcome nurse Harriet Moxon today for an interview. Harriet's really sorry she can't be with us today at the conference, but she has some surgery planned. So we decided to record the interview to capture Harriet's thoughts about a range of topics. So welcome, Harriet. My first question is, tell us a little about your career.
Sure, thank you for having me. I've been a nurse now for 12 years. I started off in haematology and gastro, then moved into palliative care on a secondment post, then had a couple of children on maternity leave, and then came back into Frailty. And then my most recent job has been a matron for a nursing home, which you know very well.
Yes, so we know St Vincent's Nursing Home in Hillingdon as a great nursing home. And recently we've been working with you as you've been training to be a nurse prescriber, which is great. But also in your role as lead senior nurse at St Vincent's, tell me what the challenges were working in a nursing home.
I think running a big team, I think managing people is always a challenge. But also keeping up standards of care. I think it's very difficult to make the standards of care uniform across the board. And to keep a good reputation within the community.
Okay, well, I know you absolutely enhance the care at St Vincent's, and I know you're taking a break from there at the moment, which we are sorry about, but you need the time, and you'll tell us a bit about why later. Now, one of the reasons to interview you was you had a major traumatic accident a few years ago when you were on holiday in Spain, I think.
Fuerteventura, yeah.
And I wonder if you can bear to tell us a bit more about the accident.
Yeah, so the August of 2023, I'd gone away on holiday to Fuerteventura. I was a week into my holiday when we had gone for breakfast in a local cafe. And my son and my husband had just nipped off to go to the toilet, and a car veered off the road and hit myself and 15 others who were eating breakfast. And I sustained a T11, T12 spinal cord fracture, which has impeded my spinal cord. I was taken to the local hospital in Fuerteventura where I had a splenectomy done, and then airlifted to Gran Canaria where I had my spinal surgery.
So that gives me goosebumps to even think about it. The major trauma. I don't know what happened to your children during that accident.
So my son and husband had gone off to the toilet, so they weren't there. They just came back to the carnage after. But my daughter was hit in the accident, but she wasn't taken. I was the one that was hit with the main impact. She sustained a head injury, but not a severe head injury. Bruised lungs and a laceration to her leg.
So splenectomy, for those in the audience who haven't got a surgical understanding, your spleen must have been bleeding and you needed urgent surgery.
Life-saving surgery.
Life-saving. Yeah. Quite apart from the spinal cord injury. So I don't know how long you were in hospital locally in the Canaries.
I was in the Canary Islands for 2 weeks, so I was in ITU for 5 days and then stepped down to a surgical ward for another week before being repatted to St Mary's.
Okay, and do you remember all of that?
Yeah, so I was in intensive care and intubated for those 5 days, so I have no memory of that. I remember being woken in the ITU and quite distressed and not really understood what was going on. I was restrained because nurses make the worst patients. And yes, I remember quite vividly the experience in Spain wasn't the best.
Okay, and do you remember knowing or learning that your legs weren't moving?
So I remember a doctor coming around quite frequently, maybe every other day, and poking around my genitals to tell me whether I could feel anything. And he said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "Yes, you're the man that keeps touching me." And he was so there was that understanding, but without the real knowledge of why he was doing what he was doing.
But you didn't have a sense that your legs weren't moving?
No, is the answer. Not until not until a little bit later on, when I was less medicated, did I have an understanding of why, what had really gone on.
And what the future might hold, I guess.
I'm not too sure at what point that landed, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I think I had a general understanding that my legs weren't working, but I didn't understand necessarily the severity of what the rest of that diagnosis meant.
Because I guess it's so important for me as a clinician, we don't really understand the impact of sharing bad news, and it is shocking news that you may not walk again or that you're paralysed. Even if it's temporary, it's still shocking. And so I guess that's underpins my question. But my next question is, as a nurse, a senior experienced nurse, how did it feel like being in a foreign hospital? I don't know what your Spanish is like, but did they appreciate you were a senior nurse?
The communication was dire. I think I met one English speaking doctor and one English speaking nurse throughout the whole time. I had one interpreter once who was there for the initial breaking bad news. I don't think that they really understood or cared, if I'm honest, about whether I was a nurse or not, because the communication was so bad. And I think for me, too much knowledge was a problem. I think because I knew so much of how I should be treated. I knew that I should be on an air mattress. I knew that I should have heparin for anticoagulants for prevention of DVTs. I knew all of these things that I should be having in place that weren't there, that it was more of a frustration than anything else.
Gosh, and what about the physical nursing care? You've mentioned air mattress, care of the body, the medication, the analgesia.
In ITU, I can't really comment. I know that my sister, who was there with me, said that it was great and there were no complaints. Stepping down onto a surgical ward, not really an understanding of what had gone on in terms of paraplegic care. Not so good. I mean, the temperature in the room was terrible. I was nursed and bed bathed by two men. They didn't manage my bowels. I had a catheter in situ. There was a lot that could have been improved.
Okay.
I think.
Wow, so no accident in Spain.
Yes, avoid at all costs.
Okay. But then you were airlifted.
I was.
To Stoke Mandeville.
To St Mary's first.
Okay, in London.
Yes.
Okay, what happened there?
So we had to crowdfund to get me home. So we had to pay privately for the air ambulance because my insurance didn't cover repack back into the UK. I was taken via private jet, lovely, to St Mary's, and it was like the best present in the world. And the moment I came off the aeroplane at Luton, I was put onto an air mattress. I sobbed the whole way, and I actually could communicate my needs, and it was like the most amazing thing.
Gosh, so that was about 2 weeks after the
That was 2 weeks post, yeah.
Okay, so you went to St Mary's. I don't know how long you were there for.
I was in St Mary's for 2 weeks.
In a spinal ward?
I was in the major trauma unit.
Okay.
I had acquired bilateral PEs.
Yeah, wow.
Bilateral DVTs. I had sepsis, urosepsis. So I was quite sick for most of the time that I was in St Mary's.
So some of that could have been avoided.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Could have been, yeah. And stayed at St Mary's for 2 weeks before I was accepted into Samuel.
Okay, and that's the spinal unit at Stoke Mandeville for further rehab.
So yeah, it's the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital in Stanmore for rehab.
In Stanmore.
Yeah, it's a similar spinal unit to Stoke Mandeville, but just works slightly differently.
So I guess once you were back in the UK, do you feel your voice as a nurse was beginning to be heard?
Yes, very much so. From far and wide, matrons and other nurses very much came to visit and speak to me, and were very kind and caring, and it was they were amazing.
Now, as I see you today, Harriet, and as I've worked with you in recent months, we see you as an upbeat, extraordinary, resilient person.
Yeah.
With a lot of hope for the future. Where does that all come from, and how you must have had some dark moments during this last 2 years.
To be honest with you, I think you ride the wave. There was only... I only really remember one day in Stanmore where I shut everybody out, shut the curtains and cried all day. And that was very early on. And I think that was with the realisation of, I was surrounded by lots of negative people, to be honest. And I think it was quite a difficult space to see potential where it wasn't being used. And
staff, negative staff.
Not so much staff, but other patients. And I think, at different stages of your life with spinal cord injury, I can imagine it hits differently. I'm in the fortunate position that I am 36 and I've had my children, and I was in a pretty good place beforehand. I think you either have the mentality or you don't, is my opinion. I think I was in the gym, I was very active, I was the fittest that I had been.
And you were fit before the accident.
The accident. So I think you just rally and get on with it. And, I'm the only person that's responsible for my outcome. And so I think it's about control more than anything.
I think a lot of people will take that message home today. You mean it's very easy to blame others or say the physio wasn't good enough?
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's me that shows up.
Yeah.
So, if you want an outcome, then strive for it. Otherwise, you're the only person to blame when things don't work out the best way possible.
Thank you. Gosh, that is an amazing message. Now, one of the next questions I wanted to ask was about being back at work. Because eventually you left the spinal unit.
I did.
Went home, had lots of, before we talk about work, adaptations to your home. What's had to change?
Yeah, so I was living in a 4-bed semi-D, very much lived upstairs, upstairs, downstairs, children upstairs, one of my sons in the downstairs bedroom. We had to remove my son from the downstairs bedroom and adapt that into a wet room / bedroom, so I kind of sleep in a adapted shower room. And fortunately my husband works in construction, so it was turned around pretty quick. Not ideal, in the long term I will build probably a house, and
I think you said you hope to move.
I hope to move, yeah,
purpose built
and everything accessible. At the minute it's hit and miss. I don't put my children to bed, which isn't always a bad thing. And I don't necessarily have access to my washing machine. Again, not necessarily a bad thing.
Good thing.
So there are things that I can't do that I did before, but I'm trying my best to get it done.
Yeah, I don't think you are the sort of person who focuses on what you can't do.
No, I'm not.
No. I've seen you get out of your car when it's parked too close to another car. Tell me about driving. How does that work?
Yeah, so I have an adapted car where I drive with my hands. Easy, to be honest. It's not. I took one lesson when I was in Stanmore, so I had a lesson with a driving instructor who specialised in hand controls.
So you brake with your hand?
You brake and accelerate with your hand.
Oh, wow.
And it probably took about 15 minutes of kangarooing down a road first before I got used to it.
Okay, but you've had no problems driving?
Not so much driving. Parking is a problem. People like to park very close. Can't get the wheelchair in and out. Generally, not too bad, but I've had a few sticky situations where I've had to go in on the passenger side and transfer over.
And you don't have a sign on your car saying please leave a gap?
No, normally the disabled bays are big enough.
Okay.
Yeah, wide enough and big enough, but not always the case.
Okay. Now, more difficult question. How have your children adapted to your disability?
So I have 5, ranging from 17 all the way through to 6. The older 3 boys probably found it a bit more difficult because of the transition of what I used to do, kick a football around with them, chase them up the stairs when they were naughty. Lots, very much more proactive with them, taking them to friends' houses, very active. And I think the babies, the 2 littlest ones, I'm just mum. They just take me for who I am now, rather than the memory of what I was necessarily 2 years ago.
Do they talk about the accident, the little ones?
Yeah, and I encourage it. I think it's important. I took them back last year to the site of the accident.
Wow.
Because it's just as traumatic for them, maybe more traumatic for them, I would say, than necessarily for me. because my son witnessed the carnage after, and my daughter was a part of it, but only has the memories of being on the floor. So I thought it was important for them to see the fact that I'm going back and it's not an issue, but also, you know, as part of a closure part for them, I think.
How old were they at the time of the accident?
5 and 7, so they're coming up 9 and 7 now. Yeah.
And they probably talk about it at school.
Yeah, so I went into the school and did a Celebrating Differences Day.
Wow.
Where the kids asked me lots of questions about being in a wheelchair and how do you do lots of things. So that was fun. Yeah, and we did a little bit of wheelchair basketball in the playground.
Is that a new career for you?
No, I don't think so. Not really my forte, if I'm honest.
Okay, so being back at work at St Vincent's,
Mm-hmm.
how did residents in the nursing home take to you as a nurse in a wheelchair?
So I think with age comes a certain amount of free speech. I've had a few funny comments. I had a lady say to me, "Oh, what are you doing on a trolley?" So I've had a few funny comments, but do you know what? Generally, they all backed me. I had a lot of support from them. Lots of them put into my GoFundMe page. There was a lot of love there.
That's great. So I've seen you in action at the hospice. I know you've come on a few ward rounds.
Yes.
And I've introduced you as a colleague nurse working with us. But you can see some of the patients and families wondering, why is this person in a wheelchair?
Yeah.
Everybody must wonder why you're in a wheelchair, because you look really well.
Thank you.
And I often think, well, they don't know that you haven't had a skiing accident or it's temporary.
Yeah.
But you're very open about talking about the accident and your disability.
I think it's better to... Everyone's questioning. You know, even if I see somebody in a chair, I think, oh, what's happened? I'd rather somebody ask than made assumption. And I'm not... You know, I'm not ashamed to have that conversation. I think it's important that people... We come across it all day, every day. So why not ask the questions and get the answers?
Okay, well, you are very brave and very open, and I've seen that in action. I'm lucky enough to have worked with you. You've presumably passed your nurse prescribing.
I have.
And I hope that you will be using that in action in the future.
Hopefully, yeah.
I know you're having a break from work at the moment for various reasons, and you're on a trial. Tell us about the trial.
I am. So I've applied for the Impress trial, which is a where they pop a little electrode into the spine, where they're hoping to see whether it can improve bladder function and bowel function and potentially sexual function, mainly in men, I think, for the latter of that. But yeah, it's exciting. Let's see. I won't know whether I'm compatible for it until they actually take me into surgery, because it sits just where my fixation is on the spine. But I'm willing to give it a go, see what happens.
Okay, that's also very brave. Now, you've mentioned bladder and bowels.
Yes.
Tell me, I mean, it's so embarrassing to even talk about bladder and bowels now, let alone how you are managing it. But you've been very open.
Yes.
So,
I
how do you manage your bladder?
So I use an intermittent self-catheterisation. I think people, when you look at somebody in a wheelchair or you think about spinal cord injury, it's not the first thing you think of is bladder. How do you manage somebody's bladder? How do you manage your bowel? But it's actually it's more of an issue in day-to-day life than being in the chair itself. My bladder, I have to self-catheterise. I have sensation, luckily, that I am aware.
So you can feel when you need to go?
Yes, so I know when my bladder is full, and then I transfer onto a toilet and empty it with a tiny little catheter. And I do that as I would do normally, really.
And as a woman, that's not as easy as
no,
if
it's
you're
not,
a man.
not as easy as a man. Can be a bit of fumbling, but generally okay.
You've got better and better.
I think also being a nurse was useful for landmarks.
Right, okay, we're using lots of euphemisms, but everybody in the audience will know what you mean.
Yes.
And what about bowels?
So bowels, again, fortunately for me, I was what they term as a upper motor neuron
lesion.
Yes. So I don't have a flaccid bowel, so I can use a suppository in the morning and I get a spontaneous result from that. And just keep it regular, really.
So you just sit on the loo and watch your diet?
And wait and see, yes. So generally more regular now than I would have been prior to the accident, if I'm honest. And it's just about keeping a good diet, lots of water, and exercise as much as you can.
Yeah, tell us how you seem extremely strong. Tell us about your exercise regime.
Yeah, so I work out 5 days a week. I do 2 upper body workouts to help with lifting my wheelchair because it's very heavy, and just mainly for maintaining shoulder strength and shoulder stability. I do a Pilates, physio-led Pilates session once a week for my core so that I can hopefully one day be able to stand and walk independently. I also do 2 sets of physio with a neuro rehab unit in Hemel Hempstead twice a week, and that's working on my legs, glutes and hamstrings.
So you're probably fitter than anybody in this audience,
I mean, cardio maybe not, but muscle strength maybe.
Okay, and strong upper body strength.
Yes.
Okay, and you're hoping one day to be more mobile, I presume.
Yes, so I am fully aware that I will probably need a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I am hoping for a hybrid. I'm hoping to be able to stand, take some steps, be able to access difficult spaces that you can't do in a wheelchair, and maybe be able to do some stairs in the future. They're my goals. But I'm not in any way, shape or form deluded in the fact that I will probably I will need my wheelchair. And as I get older, my needs will change.
Okay, and do you follow all the research on spinal injury? Because every now and then there'll be some breakthrough story in one of the newspapers about people walking when they were told they will never walk again.
Yes, I think, again, it's very difficult when you first present with your spinal cord injury for people to make a clinical judgment on what your outcome is going to be. So I think a lot of that is down to, fortunately, what we can gain and what we don't, and how much hard work you put into it. Clearly some spinal cord injuries are more severe than others, but as an incomplete spinal cord injury, I think it's very difficult to make that prediction. So I think people's outcomes generally are better than doctors will have to break the bad news. This is the worst case scenario. So I think you'll always, get a better result depending on what you put in.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our interview, Harriet. A couple of more questions from me. Who would you say has helped you most during this traumatic journey?
Oh, can I be selfish and say me?
Yes, that's a great answer.
I have a lot of support. So my husband is great. My children are amazing. My mum and dad are local and they're very good too. But actually at the end of the day, it's me, if I'm honest. I have my mornings, like 4:30 this morning when I really didn't want to get out of bed. But you have to just rally on and get through it. And I think having that mindset and ability to override the thought process and just get on with it, I think is what's got me through.
Okay, well, your self-esteem doesn't seem to be dented. Now, we haven't mentioned your husband much. I hope he's helping with the washing machine. How's your relationship with him?
So I think we both mourn the old version of me. I think it would be wrong to say that it's not different. But it just sees me for me, although in a wheelchair. And I think also he has the mindset that it's a transient. He knows me so well that he sees that this is a transient phase and not forever. So I think he has, quite positive outlook on it too. But generally, it is different. Date nights are different. Life in general is different, but that's it. It's different, but not the end.
He does sound extraordinary, and it sounds though your relationship has got stronger and different.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know you are hoping to go back to nursing as your main career.
Yes.
I think you should also do some blogging and writing a book or making a film, because you are definitely reducing the stigma of not just disability, but disability from a nursing perspective and also a career perspective, and a mother and a wife. So I've learnt a great deal just from getting to know you and interviewing you today. So what's your best hope, say, for the next year or two?
Well, I'm taking some time out from work. I want to focus on my rehab. I'm doing some work with the Spinal Cord Association, so some charity work there, some volunteering. to reach out to people who are newly injured in the local hospitals. I would like to, or I am going to come and volunteer here at Michael Sobel. And I think, have a nice summer off and watch this space.
Great. Okay, thank you so much,
Thank
Harriet.
you for having me.